Welcome to the Autism Infocast. I'm Peter Clark, founder and chairman of the Autism Info Center. Our podcasts delve into every part of autism and neurodiversity, and we want to help you spread understanding, respect, and kindness for those whose lives are affected. Whether you're autistic yourself, or whether you know or care for someone who's autistic, or maybe you just come into contact with autistic people in everyday life. Either way, please feel free to check out our hundreds of articles, videos, books, and training courses at autisminfocenter.org. And I'll leave you now in the capable hands of today's hosts, Jemima and Theo. Over to you.
Welcome to the podcast. We're really glad you could join us today. We're diving into something super important, but maybe not talked about enough. What it's like to age with autism. We've looked at quite a bit of information to pull out the key things, what you might expect, and crucially, how to think ahead. Because it's becoming really clear, isn't it? Autism is a lifelong thing, a developmental condition. And our understanding, well, it's really growing now about how it affects people right through their lives, especially into older age.
That's such a vital shift, absolutely. For so long, the focus was mainly on kids, maybe young adults. But it's just so crucial now to really get a handle on the unique experiences, the strengths, and the challenges too that older autistic people face. And that brings up a big question, doesn't it? Does autism just stay the same, or does it change over a lifetime? Well, the core things, they stay. But how they look, how they present, that can definitely change with age, with life experience. Understanding that and, planning proactively, that's just paramount for a good later life.
Okay, let's unpack that a bit, because this idea that autism evolves with age, that's really interesting. You might sort of assume it's static, right? Developmental condition stays the same. But everything we looked at suggests it's, much more dynamic. So it seems like some traits might actually get stronger or maybe more obvious, while others could fade a bit. Like, what happens after decades of developing ways to cope? How good can those strategies actually get?
That's a great question. It really is. And it hits on this idea of adaptation. An older autistic person, they haven't just, gotten used to it. They've often built these incredibly detailed, really personalized ways of managing things that used to be huge challenges. Think of it maybe like a really precise internal map for navigating sensory stuff, or like a script for social situations that's been refined over years. These aren't just coping things. They become like deeply ingrained strengths, almost second nature. This whole lifetime of learning and adapting means many can handle sensory input or social cues with a kind of mastery they might not have had when they were younger.
Wow, that sounds like a real level of self-mastery. But what's the other side of that? I mean, as we all get older, things change, right?
Yeah.
Cognitively, physically. How does that interact with those strategies they built up?
Exactly. Yeah, that's the crucial point. While that lifetime of adapting is powerful, the sort of normal changes that come with aging, physical, cognitive, they can sometimes lower someone's capacity to manage. So paradoxically, things like sensory overload or anxiety might actually become more difficult than they were, say, in midlife, even with those well-honed strategies. And then there's this huge thing called masking. That's the often totally exhausting process where autistic people consciously or sometimes unconsciously hide their traits to fit in. Imagine doing that for decades, constantly holding back natural reactions, forcing yourself into situations that feel wrong. The sheer energy drain, psychologically too, it's immense, like running a nonstop marathon. And that sustained effort, it really adds up. It can lead to serious long-term issues like chronic fatigue, much higher anxiety, even burnout, which really hits both physical and mental health hard in later life.
Yeah, that paints a picture of just, cumulative effort over a whole lifetime. But it's not all about the challenges, is it? The materials we looked at also really stressed the strengths that often come with autism. Could you talk a bit about how those might actually be supports in older age? I'm thinking about things like maybe a liking for routine or those deep special interests.
Absolutely. And those consistent parts of who someone is, like that preference for routine or those really deep special interests, they're incredibly valuable assets. A preference for routine and predictability, it's not just a quirk. It can give life this wonderfully stable, reassuring structure. And that's profoundly good for well-being, especially as other things might change. And those special interests, they don't just vanish. They often remain a huge source of joy, of purpose, of real engagement right through life. And what's really insightful is how these strengths can actually help fight against something really common in older age, which is loneliness.
Well, that's an interesting link because loneliness, yeah, it's a big issue for lots of older people. How do those routines and interests specifically help with that for autistic individuals?
It's quite compelling, actually. While, many older people might struggle with feeling isolated, for an autistic person, being deeply involved in their special interests can provide this profound sense of purpose and connection. It might not always look like traditional socializing, but it fulfills that need. These passions, these routines, they really form a bedrock for well-being. They offer comfort, consistency, fulfillment. For instance, maybe joining an online forum about a really niche interest. That can provide a sense of community and intellectual buzz that might be harder to find elsewhere. It's really about meeting social and emotional needs in ways that actually work with someone's autistic strengths and preferences. That leads to a really meaningful sense of connection.
Okay, so if we tie all this back to just, practical daily life as people age, it sounds like planning ahead is just absolutely critical. One of the biggest things people worry about getting older is keeping their independence, right? How does that work for autistic people? What kind of support might be needed there?
You're spot on. Independence is huge. For autistic people, this often means needing really solid support for daily living skills. Things many people might not even think about: managing money, cooking meals, keeping the house running. Our sources really hammer home that planning for the future needs to involve figuring out exactly what support might be needed down the line to keep that independence going for as long as humanly possible. It's not just about fixing problems, it's about empowering people to stay autonomous.
And right alongside independence is dealing with healthcare. It sounds like healthcare settings can be, incredibly tough for autistic people. What are the specific things they often run up against that make getting medical care so difficult, maybe even distressing?
Oh, the list can be pretty long, unfortunately. Think about just the sensory environment. Hospitals, clinics, they're often noisy. The lighting's harsh, strange smells everywhere. That's instant overload for many. Then there are communication issues. Medical language can be confusing. Plus, some people have difficulties with interoception. That's knowing what's going on inside your own body. So explaining symptoms or pain can be really, really hard. And of course, just having your routine totally disrupted by appointments, that alone can cause huge anxiety, even before you get to the actual medical stuff.
Wow. Yeah, I can really see how overwhelming that would be. Are there practical things, tools or strategies that can help autistic people navigate all that better?
Yes, absolutely. And this is where that proactive planning is so key. One really excellent tool is something called an Autism Hospital Passport.
Yeah.
The real power of this, it's not just the information it holds, though that's vital. It's that it's a tool for self-advocacy. It helps the autistic person keep some control, some predictability in what can feel like a really confusing and stressful place. So this passport has key info: how you prefer to communicate, what your sensory needs are, things that make you anxious, what helps you calm down. It helps staff provide better, more personalized support. It really changes the dynamic. Beyond that, it's really important to ask for reasonable adjustments. That could mean things like getting the very first appointment of the day so the waiting room isn't packed, or asking if there's a quiet space you can wait in, and always asking for instructions or important info to be written down. It's easy to forget things when you're stressed. These small tweaks can make a massive difference.
That makes so much sense, putting that power, that agency back in the person's hands. Okay, so moving beyond the immediate medical stuff, let's look a bit longer term, thinking about social care. As needs change over time, some people might need care, maybe at home, maybe in like a residential place. What's really crucial for autistic individuals when looking at those options?
Yeah, a really important point that came up again and again is just how vital it is for social care providers, the staff, to actually understand autism. If there's a lack of awareness, it can easily lead to misunderstandings, and then the support isn't right, it might even be unhelpful. Another key thing is consistency. Consistency of care, consistency of staff. Autistic people often find huge comfort and feel much safer with familiar routines and familiar faces. Change can be really unsettling, so when you're looking at future care, you really want to actively seek out providers who have specific autism training and make absolutely sure any care plan is genuinely person-centered. That means it's developed with the autistic person, maybe their family too, and it clearly spells out their needs, their preferences, how they communicate best. It has to be collaborative.
Exploration, not just provision. Okay. And then moving from daily care, what about housing? That's a huge long-term thing. What are the practical options if someone gets to a point where they can't stay in their current home anymore, maybe because they need more support? It's a big worry for lots of people, autistic or not.
It absolutely is a major concern. The options can vary quite a bit depending on location and individual needs, but generally you're looking at things like supported living. That's where someone has their own place, like their own flat or house, maybe rented, but they get support visiting them tailored to whatever they need. Or for people with more complex needs, perhaps needing round-the-clock support, residential care might be the better fit.
Okay. And what about managing money, benefits, all that stuff? That seems like it could get really complicated, especially for someone who might find bureaucracy or abstract financial stuff difficult.
You've hit on a really critical point there. Managing finances, navigating the benefits system, it can become incredibly complex, especially as you get older. There's always changing rules, endless forms, understanding the small print. The sources really stress how important support can be here, maybe from an agency that helps manage personal budgets or having a trusted advocate like a family member or a professional. This kind of support is crucial not just for managing the money itself, but for making sure the person's financial security is protected, preventing them from being exploited. It's about safeguarding their rights and making sure they stay in control of their own resources.
That's vital, yeah. Protecting their rights and well-being. And speaking of well-being, social isolation. We touched on it earlier. It's a risk for older people generally, but it sounds like it could be even more of a concern for autistic individuals. Maybe because social interaction can be harder or networks might be smaller to begin with. What's the impact of that potential isolation? And more importantly, how can you help mitigate it?
Yeah, isolation can have a really profound negative effect on mental health, on just general well-being. It really matters. For older autistic adults, finding ways to maintain meaningful connections is so important. Our sources pointed to some really practical strategies. Online communities, for example. They can be great because they're often accessible from home, and the interaction is usually based around shared interests, not complicated social chit-chat. That can feel much more comfortable. Similarly, local groups focused on those special interests can be fantastic. Think like a model railway club or a history society or an art group. These provide chances for social contact in a setting that's inherently understanding and comfortable. It fosters real connection in a way that works for the individual. It's about finding the right kind of connection that respects their social needs.
So as we kind of wrap up this podcast, what really seems to stand out is this picture of aging with autism as, well, a unique mix, right? Lifelong strengths meeting new challenges that might come with age. But the most powerful tools, the things that make the biggest difference, it really seems to be that proactive planning and clear self-advocacy, or having someone advocate with you by really leaning into the stability that routine offers and tapping into the joy and purpose from those special interests. It seems like well-being can genuinely be nurtured right through the later years.
Exactly, yeah. Ultimately, having a positive experience of aging as an autistic person really comes down to having support systems around you that aren't just understanding, but are truly respectful and genuinely person-centered. That's what ensures every older autistic person can lead a life with dignity, with purpose, and with contentment. The absolute bottom line from everything we've looked at is that their voice, their choices, their unique needs, they have to be right at the heart of every single decision made about their future. It's really about empowering them to keep thriving, making sure their individuality is valued, and ensure their later years are just as rich and fulfilling as anyone else's.
Thank you, Jemima and Theo. I'm sure we've all learned something there today. Don't forget to visit autisminfocenter.org to hear our other episodes, browse our library of articles, see our inspiring range of books, watch our videos about autism and neurodiversity, and find out about training courses that can help you or your organization make the world a safer, happier, and more meaningful place for us all. If you've enjoyed what you've heard today, please feel free to spread the word about Autism Info Center. A quick mention on your socials is always appreciated. Until next time, this is Peter Clark from autisminfocenter.org. Have a great day.